Welcome back into Soccer Mom Sunday. This is Jen Siess. I'm really excited. This particular episode's a little bit different than what JB and I normally do. Normally you'll catch us doing a little bit of, catch up. It's often a lot about soccer running around, but I have a special thing for this one. So JB is still here. JB, say hello.
Hello.
Do a little color commentary, but I have a special guest host with me. You've heard her on this podcast before. I've had her on radio shows before too. 85er Ruth Harker, U.S. Women's National Team. Thank you for co-hosting today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And then in the background there, her teammate from before, somebody I've been stalking for at least 6 months on this podcast, Linda Gancitano, joining us from Florida, correct?
Yes, correct.
A little hour ahead. Thank you for finally, being able to come on and spending, I know it's your spring break, some time with us to catch up all things soccer and, talking about, of course, the beginnings, soccer from what feels for all of us like a very long time ago to some cool things that you and Ruth did. So first of all, just thanks for joining the podcast. Happy to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and asking.
So I want to go back to, and Ruth, you can be along for the color commentary also as well, especially when we first got Ruth started. It was really to talk about, for me, learning more about Ruth as a St. Louis soccer player who was growing up in the same time, a little bit younger than Ruth, but didn't, soccer wasn't a lot. Thank you.
She's a lot younger than I am.
But who didn't, because of the lack of coverage, right? And because of the lack of just being able to look to, I had an idol right up the road in some ways and never knew about her. Talking a little bit about her beginnings. So I have to ask you about yours. How'd you get started in the beautiful game? Like, how did soccer start for you where you were in the country at the time?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is going to sound, it was actually a blessing. I was trying out for cheerleading and I got cut. And I was like, all my friends are trying out for cheerleading. What am I going to do? Well, the other set of friends were going for soccer. So at 11 years old, I tried out for one of the club teams, right? And made the team. And my mom was one of the coaches. She knew nothing about the game of soccer, but I got really good really fast. And I started to train with the boys up at the park from between 6 and 9 o'clock after homework, and just got better and better and better, and played from some travel games and for some travel teams down here in Miami. And then I made the boys high school soccer team. I was the first girl in the state of Florida to make the boys high school soccer team. So that kind of prepared me for UCF, where I was recruited. I got recruited and had a scholarship, the small scholarships way back then. I think we had like a scholarship and a half to split amongst like 3 or 4 people, right? And the rest was filled in with Pell Grants and, stuff like that. And just played at UCF. First year redshirted because we were out of season, and I didn't want to use a year for an out of season for only 2 or 3 months. It wasn't even really in the books I don't even think it's in the books anywhere. And then UCF did fairly well the first year, made it to the final 12, where we were in the final. We lost to UNC 1-0.
We've had some of those players on.
Yeah, it was amazing because guess what? It was our own goal. Went off of Donald Labarante's head, and we watched the ball trickle into the back far post. And it was just not a good ending for us, but we were able to play with all the top teams after it was our first official collegiate year. And then the following year, we had the NCAA finals at UCF, where we were finals again with UNC.
So I've got this, goalkeeper here to my right.
I know.
Who's like own goal. Like, you can probably picture that, Ruth, right? Going in.
Absolutely.
You don't even need to be there.
Yeah. But what Linda fails to talk about here is, and she said, well, Ums will never beat us. Well, I came home after she said that and then showed her the receipt. I showed it. My mom had it. I
gotta Google it because I still don't believe it.
Oh, gosh, we're 5 minutes in and there's already a rival.
You don't believe you don't believe the newspaper article that my mom kept? No. God rest her soul. Mom, come strike her right.
Ruth, you're calling on the heavens.
I am going to have to Google it. Not only that, I am going to have to. I don't remember ever playing against you, other than I'm still at UNC.
No, you guys broke Debbie Lewis's leg. Yes,
No, I
you
did
did.
not.
Yes, you did. I don't know if it was you, but someone
It
on your
wasn't
team
me.
did. Yeah.
I only
But
heard
you
Stephanie
don't
say.
understand what kind of
I'm just
player
gonna
Linda
step away and
was.
have my beverage. You guys figure it out. Work
No,
out amongst yourselves.
I'm just saying that Linda, it was the ball or the person gets by you, never both. That's the
Never
goalkeeper
both.
creed. That's the goalkeeper creed. But that was Linda on steroids.
Oh,
Let me just say, she was a badass, and I would have, if I didn't like hate her as much as I did at you, and when she was, and then we played together.
Everybody, they're friends now.
We,
Everybody,
oh,
friends.
we are really good friends.
we're travel buddies.
Yeah, and Linda was one of the ones, outside of forgetting me on the bus, but one of the ones who sort of took me under her wing a little bit, because we played in Olympic development on the same team for I thought it was only 1 year, but maybe it was 2.
It was New Orleans or Baton Rouge for the first.
I think it's Baton Rouge, yeah.
So wait, bring me back to then. So when I think of Olympic development, I think of what I know of it nowadays, where Missouri players are playing from maybe all over Missouri, but you're in Missouri, and Linda, then you were in Florida, and you guys were playing Olympic development against, or
I spent my summers in Minnesota, because my boyfriend played pro soccer up there for the Minnesota Strikers.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I would travel up there, and that's where I would spend my entire summers up there.
So she was picked at the Olympic Festival when we did the Olympic festivals, which were Olympic development or precursors to the Olympic Games.
Okay.
They would have all the best players in the country, and it was not just soccer. It was what I thought was interesting was the water, whatever the water dancing is, the rhythmic water dancing, whatever that is. What is it called?
Synchronized swimming.
They would actually come out of the water and they had makeup. I mean, it was still on there. I was like, wow,
that's amazing.
But so Linda, that's how we became friends.
Yeah, it was Olympic Village at Rice University.
So how old were you guys at this time, approximately?
18. 19.
No, I was older than you are, because that was
still are.
Yeah, I know. That's true. I was 23?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, 1985, I would have been 23 years old.
Gotcha. So you're either, Ruth, you're in college maybe at that time.
I was still in college. I was in my senior. I was going into if we're looking at Baton Rouge, was that in 1985? Yeah, I was going into my senior year of college in that fall.
Yeah.
And so this is all, hold on, time-wise, preceding appearing for the U.S. Women's National Team for you, Linda, or during?
Well, the first Olympic festival was 1985.
Yeah.
And that's when Ruth and I played together for the first time. And
are you sure about that, Linda?
Huh?
Are you sure about that being the first
84 was a U.S. select team. I don't think
because I went to Houston.
That was 86.
Oh, and then Tulsa.
I wasn't at Tulsa because 86 was when I tore my ACL, and that was it for me.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so
so it was first one was
North Carolina. One was in. I went to one in North Carolina.
Well, that would have been maybe the NAIAW, but you weren't.
No, it was an Olympic.
You're not old enough. You're not old enough. So
I'm telling you, Linda. Do we need to look it up? Because I can look it up.
No.
The picture of me going into the Hall of Fame was taken from the Raleigh-Durham newspaper.
I'm looking it up.
At the Olympic Festival.
I don't remember. You're going to have to, because I don't remember.
I'm looking it up right now. If you're typing, that's me. You guys keep going.
Anyway, she was. But
we
great about
beat
Linda.
4-0 in UNC at the first NIAW.
I wasn't in.
That's what I'm saying. You were not in goal.
See, there you go.
No, I'm just talking about when they beat a team 4-0. I'm not in goal.
Okay. So I love this already, because we even got Anson Dorrance to admit that, yes, Umsel served UNC a loss. It was he glossed over it, but he did admit that. But it's always a good, what does that say, right, for a team at the time, being Umsel here in St. Louis, right, to somehow either compete with, maybe you topple a big team. What a big compliment to be a team that your people are gunning for.
It's huge, especially if you're able to beat a UNC who had the dynasty at that time.
Right.
No one was really beating them. you could play with them, but they had top players from, the Texas Sting. They had players from all over the country. They even tried to recruit Michelle Akers. Michelle Akers turned them down.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until later. Probably within the last few years, right, Ruth? Did you know that?
I'm sorry, I was trying to look up the.
She's trying to find proof.
Let me take a little sip here.
Yeah.
This is one of those podcasts. So when I think about, when we had Michelle Akers on, to your point, and it was like, for me, she was the only player I knew of, because some boy at school had a Soccer America magazine and she was on the cover, and I had never seen really a top level woman athlete outside of like Olympic gymnastics, right? Or whatever you could see at the time. And of course, when you have a boy in 5th grade admitting that this is a good player, and I've decided I don't really know who this Michelle Akers is, but she is now my idol. And so when we got to have her on, that was a really big deal for me. And, she told us, of course, all kinds of stories from her own days, but particularly from when you guys were all together and leaving. She felt very bad leaving Ruth on the bus. Can I just say
she told you about that too. She tells everybody.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Is this just Ruth a heavy sleeper? What's happening here?
No.
Was it a practical joke?
It was the clicks that they had. So all the USC players are. But I have to say this, Linda. You were correct. It was 1987 that it was in Raleigh-Durham. So I apologize for that. You are correct, but I do know that we did hand you a loss, and I will, if I need to give you the receipt again, I think I texted it to you, a picture of it.
I must have lost it.
Linda's like, no go here.
But she was, let me just tell you, having Linda play in front of you made me feel really secure, because Linda was ferocious. She was she was a ferocious defender, and and you don't really get to know those kinds of people because you're a goalkeeper, right? Unless
your front line,
unless
right?
They're your team,
is truly connected to you, right? Or your back line is truly connected.
Oh, yeah.
It is, but of course, I didn't know Linda, and all I knew is that she was my nemesis from another school that we played that we happened to beat, and she won't admit. But
this is going to be all episode, by the way.
But
there's got to be a follow-up on this, because I have to Google this later.
I sent you the receipt.
We get 2 episodes out of this. Fantastic.
But what I was going to say is that Linda was incredibly ferocious, and she has not gotten the credit she deserves within even her own college. Linda's not in her Hall of Fame of her college.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
So let's be right.
It's funny because, thank you for that, Ruth, because it just occurred to me, because, of everything that we've been up to lately, I went back and I looked at, I guess, my accolades, for lack of a better word, right? And at the the NAIAW, I got defensive MVP. At the NCAA final, I got defensive MVP. All-American, all-conference, and then at the Olympic Festival in '85, I got MVP.
Are you
I make
kidding
the US
me right
national
now?
team, and I'm not in the UCF Hall of Fame. And they've got players in there that don't have the accolades or the recognition, and to be able to take it at the time, that's our story, right, Ruth? Is that we didn't have anything.
Yeah.
But we made things happen anyways. We played at the highest level. We played with heart. We didn't play for the money or whatever. We didn't play for that.
$10 a day ain't gonna buy you too much.
Well, and also, Michelle told the stories too, and Ruth, I think you told some as well about, there was disparity at the time. Going to get your jerseys from the men's team and staying in a 5-star hotel, and you're in a barn, sleeping somewhere. We just recently had on, Ruth, the team, the 89-90 team here in St. Louis, Linda, that, a group of women who were probably divided by a decade, right? Decade of years. Some of them had kids, but they went on to win the over 30 Cup national championship 2 years in a row and hadn't gotten into the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame. And they finally did. And I just cannot appropriately expressed with words. I wasn't being inducted, but I felt like I was because they got that recognition. So I think I'm getting to in this point is how important it is that not even just for you yourself, right, to get that recognition that you deserve, but it's for the others, that the youngers that watch you go in, all of us seeing like that, like, wow, accolade, achievement, checks boxes, gets acknowledged. It kind of gives hope for other people that keeps grinding, that it is very important that line of sight happens for our younger generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
how do we make that happen? By the way, do I need a phone call? I get pretty loud and noisy in St. Louis.
I don't know.
Go down there.
Loud and proud. I don't even know where to go with that. It looks like it seems like that it's a lot of football players.
The football you don't play with your feet. That one, the American
Seminoles.
Yeah. So yeah. I don't know.
The not soccer.
Kim Wyant and Michelle Akers said, huh? So Kim Wyant and Michelle Akers had both said that they had sent something out. So don't know. I don't know the procedure other than, some people are in there that I just didn't feel like I had more recognition and accolades than they did. And Kim Wyant is in there, and so is Michelle Akers.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this while Jen was kind enough to invite me to at the Hall of Fame, the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame. She invited me to a table full of women.
She made our table the loudest table. Linda.
Surprise! Shocker. She always will.
Well, the thing is that those women that went up there, and so what we were really trying to celebrate is finally, out of all these thousands of men, the 10th and 11th woman were brought into the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame. In our table, one of the goals for our table was to sort of, make this stance. And when that team of those over 30 women went up there, as much as I hate the green jacket, I'm like, give them a freaking jacket. They deserve a jacket. You're bringing them into this Hall of Fame, and they didn't give them jackets.
I think in general for the teams on the Hall of Fame side, they don't, when they do a team induction.
Still should.
So yeah, but I just was pleased that they and just to see it was we had Debbie on and we talked about it was bittersweet, right? So it's that bittersweet because it happened, so it's sweet, but it's bitter for some of them because it took that long, and or some of them were missing their special people, right? So for my coach who got in, her husband passed a few years ago, and he was with her, like, he was at our soccer games when she coached me in college. He was like a team dad coming to watch us play. So it's kind of hard.
And players.
Yeah, and I think to the U.S. women's national team, you guys finally, was it last year? I feel like it was the year prior. I can't keep the years, where you guys went to the Current Stadium. Casey Current has its own stadium, right? And some of you went onto the field for, I think they're their home opener, right?
It was their home opener.
A year ago.
It was just a year ago, not two.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't keep the year straight, but like how my kids are like, Mom, this is cool, but like I'm like crying, and they're like, this is cool, but we don't know why you're crying. I'm like, you just won't probably ever understand that it just was not a recognition and a line that was drawn back when we were all young.
Yeah.
To see that. And I think it makes me wonder too. I think we asked Alex Pfeiffer about it, who is from St. Louis. She was very young when I think 15. Jay, was she 15 or 16?
15 when we talked to her.
We talked to her when she was going there. So there's this young player who I could see it when she was 7 that she was like soccer or die, right? And so she's got an ability to dream on a path there, because there is a path it's finally getting worn down enough to be a real path, but branches got hacked away by people like you and Ruth and Michelle and all those who were hacking away for all those years.
Machete.
taking a machete to all that. So let me ask you, I think it was both Ruth and maybe Michelle too talked a little bit about, the development of USA, right? The whole USA story when they thought they were booing you in Italy. If you think back to those days when you were playing, are there, besides leaving Ruth on a bus, which she's, not at all upset about, what are some of the
traumatized? What are you talking about?
Totally
She tells that
traumatized.
story everywhere we go.
I cannot sit in the back of the bus. They tried to make me do it on this bus over to Kansas
Ruth's
City.
like,
I'm like in
no.
the front seat. I'm in the
So
how she's not on the bus driver's seat?
So tell me this though. How did, first of all, what was your path to, I've got your pages open. I got a little bit of Wikipedia for as much as we can trust that. But it even calls your high school team the Coral Springs Colts boys soccer team. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. How did you get to the U.S. women's national team? Was it just through those festivals, and then they put a team together?
Yes and no. I mean, obviously you get kind of looked at when you're playing college, and at that time I wasn't playing on a club team because the university, we played pretty much all year long at UCF. And it was just a really high level of soccer. So there was no need to have to go elsewhere. And then we got selected for the Olympic Festival in '85. Prior to that, that was actually March of that year. And then we all traveled there to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But the pathway there was, the boys were strong and fast in high school, and that prepared me to play. I was a very strong player, and I'm 5'2". Probably at about that time I was probably about 120, I don't know, about 123, 124, right? And there were players that were much bigger than I was, but I never let a player push me off the ball, ever. Ever. Right. And that was playing at a level with the boys that played faster and they were stronger. I hate to say that, but obviously we won't go into the physiques of men and testosterone, but sure, they just played faster.
Sure.
And they played stronger. And I had situations on the field where some of the boys didn't like the idea that a girl was taking a ball from them. Right. And I always held my own. I had a boy tackle me from behind, and so I got up and I pushed him, because it was pretty mean tackle. And then the coach goes, okay, if she's going to play like that, get her. So the boy got up, and my brother played on the high school team with me, and he just looked at the guy and said, I don't think so, because my brother was one of the top forwards in the county at that time. So,
I don't feel like picking a battle with two.
Yeah, it was like, so it was like, that was the only time that I felt like it became a thing. I never felt discriminated, which is really weird, right? Even my entire life, we've been able to be at the wave of things to come. Right. So it's very difficult to feel discriminated when you're always further ahead of what other people are doing, even though the U.S. women's national team for us, the 85ers, was the first team.
Right.
But I never, at the time, reflecting back, maybe we were discriminated. It didn't matter at that time. In any of our minds, I don't know what's going on for everybody else, but at the time, I was so grateful and so excited to play for the United States. Right. And to be able to hear the USA in the background, right. Not knowing what that was, and then finding out they were actually cheering for the USA.
Do you guys feel like that was so cool? That had to feel amazing.
Goosebumps. Like today, I could still get goosebumps from the national anthem. And then when they were out there saying that, and you don't know who likes you and who doesn't like you.
Sure.
So it was a very, very special moment.
Do you have any? You guys have any favorite? I mean, that sounds like one obviously favorite moment that's been told, but like other, like maybe something somebody doesn't know about those years that you did, whether it was the build to it or, I'm going to ask you, Ruth, to explain the ferocity of her as a defender that's coming. But just like any fun besides, it could be on the pitch or even off the pitch, like who snored or
Ruth,
Linda.
She was my roommate also in Italy.
Oh,
We've been roommates lots.
Isn't that fun though? I find that to be the funnest dynamic. Having myself also, played where you play against somebody and you're just like, I hate that person, and that's for a good reason, right? Because they're such a ferocious opponent or whatever that is. And then you're like, Jackie Billett's one for me. Like, you've met her. How about the sweetest person on earth, right? Yeah. But as an opponent, like, it was just like, God, not her again, right? And then we get a little older and get to play together, and I'm like, I love her so much. She's just the best. I love it when she scores goals for us, but I didn't like it when she was an opponent doing that.
Right.
Michelle always say, she always talks about me punching her in the head, like
she did talk about that several times.
Right. But then it's funny because at the time, like, no way, because she's trying to score on me. Right. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. So I'm going to punch you in the head at the same time as the ball gets there, and we'll make it all even. But
any fun memories you guys can think of that hasn't been, like, beyond the USA story, which is fantastic, but
the teams tried so hard to get us to party. They were discotheques every single night, man. Every single night. And
wait, like set up for you, or you guys went to go there?
They wanted us to go there.
We'd board the bus and we'd be off to another discotheque. And the really weird thing about it was, it looked like the USA was the only team there.
Right. They just wanted to look at us. They were trying to get us off our game.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're going to get this team smashed, and then we're going to play them, and we think we can beat them.
Well, we had jet lag, first of all, right? We come in, the first night, and I think we had maybe a day or so to practice before we actually had our first match. And then at night, it was like one event after another.
Well, you guys played too, where there wasn't, I did a little bit of some of that, but you guys more so, where there wasn't a focus on, resting legs, right? There was no resting leg. You just played. You played back-to-back games for 5 days in a row.
I had that locally, like my coach, Mark Kaiser, I loved dearly. He would always like, let's get in the pool, in between games, things like that to rest. But with our original team, we had none of that. There was no rest your legs. There was no get a massage, get an ice bath. We all knew what to do.
They didn't measure loads
because we played
laundry.
But we did have. Do you remember Marge, Linda? She went to work for Razor, but she was the kinesiologist.
I don't remember.
She was the kinesiologist for the North team, and
vaguely now that you say that.
But she went to work for Razor Blade after. She's an engineer, and so her whole goal was to look at movement.
Oh, really?
And so she was really ahead of her time.
I was going to say, I don't think anybody
back
was talking
then.
about
And I remember
that.
her talking to me about my technique a little bit on certain things, or and so she got me when I got back from one of those festivals, she sent me a pair of razor blades, and they were like the roller blades. But they were called razor blades, and so she worked for Rollerblades.
Rollerblades, but the brand. Okay, got it.
Right. And so she sent me a pair of those, and I remember I was down in Forest Park, and I'm like riding it, and I can't stop myself. And I wore them one time, and she goes, "Oh, I sent you the racer blades by accident."
The ones that probably don't have brakes on them.
I'm aiming as I can for the side for the grass, and then it was just like,
and then you just did a keeper dive on the grass.
Rolled.
Anyway, I'm thinking of two. Again, a couple episodes ago, I think the ladies talked about just their quest, right, for the over 30 Open Cup, which is a niche in and of itself, but still, what an achievement. But then, whatever year it was, their flight was weather, and their flight was delayed. Which, by the way, they all were paying for these things unless they had a sponsor, right? Their flight gets delayed. They get to the airport. This is before cell phones. You're not like calling the hotel shuttle. So there's no shuttle there. Finally, they get to the hotel and they're asleep. They get in at like 3:00 in the morning. So their rooms are gone. There's no room. So they slept in the hotel lobby and have to play a game at like, noon. So they're sleeping in the lobby. And I'm like, my kids would die if that happened, if they didn't get in their bed and then have the appropriate hours of sleep that now we all have. We have science and studies behind the number of sleep and your nutrition and how you do this. And back then, Yeah, I just slept on the floor of a hotel and I'm here to win a game.
Oh
and
my
ate,
gosh.
and ate some Cheez-Its.
It's funny that you said we were talking about that for prep, because when we arrived at Baton Rouge, Louisiana, we were training at Rice. We had 2 days. So we had a morning practice and an evening practice, right? And I was really heavily into weight training at the time. And I went into Rice University and I did my weight training. And I noticed that there was no AC. We're talking 100 something degrees in the middle of summer. And I noticed that I started getting beads and chills, and I had water on top of my goosebumps. And within an hour, I had the most wickedest headache ever and stomach, and I had to go to the training room. I ended up not being able to train with the team for the entire time there and show up for games because I had heat exhaustion. I lost 7 pounds of weight. And I could not.
God.
I remember at Baton Rouge. I mean, I don't know who thought that would be a good idea to hold an Olympic festival in Baton Rouge in July. And the thing is, I remember for goalies at that time, I'm wearing those long pants, a long shirt. I remember clearly going underneath the training table and sitting because I thought I'm going to pass out. If it was so incredibly hot and humid. So the temperature's like 102 degrees plus the humidity's at 100%. And you're just
and these are before, cooling technology, things that you can wear and
watching your food, your fluid intake, what you should be eating. Right. We're talking 85.
Yeah.
I know you're looking at like Megan Rapinoe right now going, I don't know when to shower. I don't know when to, because everything was so regimented for us. We're like,
you're like, whatever. I show up and play.
Well, it's funny because I watched. I'll never forget. I went to one of the practices in Colorado when I watched the U.S. Women's National Team just get prepared for Brazil, and I'm at their practice, and I first noticed that every single athlete player had the heart monitors on, and there was somebody looking at their heart rate the entire time, making sure they were training in their training heart zone. At the very end, Amy Rodriguez had to stay out there because her minutes had dropped below what it should have been during training. She had to go out there and shoot.
They do sprints, right? Yeah. They do like the extra runs and sprints to get it, right?
Runs to make sure their minutes were in their training heart zone.
Yeah,
now, we weren't that scientific.
No. Like, how tired are you?
Am I still alive?
You want me to do another sprint? Okay, coach.
Okay, yeah. Sure. So fast forward, I'm thinking, so Ruth talked a little bit about it. Michelle talked a little bit about it. She stayed in the game for quite a while, but that transition, right, from being a competitive soccer player at that level, just for me, transitioning from being a collegiate athlete to then going on to grad school where I had done my 4 years. I was no longer in that. I lost a little bit of my identity. I struggled with that. And you guys are at a time where there was nowhere else to go. When you were done, you were done. You moved on to, quote, civilian life, so to speak. What was that transition like for you, leaving the game? I know you tore your ACL, and was that hard for you to do? Was it just, you just moved on with it?
Yeah, it was. Okay. So 87 was probably the turning point of my life. It was, and I don't talk about this much. It was a pretty dark time. I had lost my grandma, my grandpa, my mom, tore my ACL, graduated college, moved up to Minnesota where I didn't know a lot of people out of college. And it was just a really dark time, probably for a good year and a half. I wasn't really working. I was working, obviously my education is in education. But I left Minnesota, came back home, following in my dad's footsteps where he was a principal, and I started to use my degree, and that was a saving grace because teaching is so purposeful, and I majored in physical education, but I'm currently teaching happiness studies.
That's what Ruth told me when I was reaching out to you. She's like, you got to talk to her. She teaches happiness. And I've never heard it put that way. What does that mean?
Wait, Linda, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
So during that dark period that you had, was the dark period, I mean, no, I'm not negating the death of your grandparents, but was that dark period this lack of identity?
Absolutely.
that you were feeling. And when that happened, what were you saying to yourself about that?
Well, we spend so much time soccer. There wasn't really time to think about other things, right? Soccer was
Right.
your
Right.
identity. It was what
Totally.
you did when you woke up. It was what you did when you went to bed at night. You were a soccer player, and then a national team player, and then all of a sudden it's done in a second.
Yeah.
It was like the perfect storm. New cleats. The pitch was slightly moist because the humidity was so bad, right? And a brand new spanking new ball. I never slide tackle with my left leg. And I went out in a slide tackle with my left leg. And it was done and over. In that moment, it wasn't that it hurt so bad. I knew in that moment that it was over.
Yeah, me too.
Right. And in that moment was where the tears came, because there's a lot of stuff that was going on there too. It's like, now what?
Mm-hmm.
All the fear was there. It was like, now what do I do?
Did you have a support system in Florida?
Not really. My mom was really, really sick. She was dying of cancer. It was just a really tough time. And a lot of my friends were not my friends that I knew from high school, right? Because I had been away at college and I had to create new friends. And living in Minnesota for a couple of years too, after my mom had passed, I didn't have a lot of nurturing support there.
So did you start out teaching gym, or did you start out teaching happiness?
I started teaching. I taught 30 years of physical education. And I absolutely loved it. And I kept saying to myself, there's something else, right? There was always a little bit of missing at the end, because in my personal life, I was into the motivational speaking. I was more into affirmations. I was more into the spiritual realm, nature, developing healthy and happy relationships. And then all of a sudden, after the Stoneham Douglas shooting here in Broward County, the superintendent had invited me because he knew that I had been teaching special programs called Heart Math that teaches kids to go to their heart when they get challenged.
I've heard of Heart Math. Yes.
Oh, it's an amazing program, right? So I was invited to go and speak to the superintendent. And after an hour, he goes, let's teach a class. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I just, I hear again, I identify myself as physical education. And in my personal life, I have this whole world of positive psychology for 35 years, right? And then I linked into Dr. Ben Tal-Shahar from Harvard. And I asked him if he'd help Broward County write curriculum. And he said, absolutely. Would you like to be a guest in my course? I said, absolutely, So I took his class, Intro to Happiness and Facilitating Happiness, for a year. Absolutely amazing man, amazing course, right? We flew him down here to meet the mindfulness committee for Broward County Public Schools. And you just have to sit in front of Dr. Tall. And this man is very, very special. And he is absolutely brilliant. And he's got all the research-based information and content and experience that you can apply these tools to your life, because we are responsible for happiness. Happiness doesn't come this way. Happiness goes this way, right? So there's things that we can do, and that's what I teach. And they're called SPIRE principles. S is for spiritual. That would be mindfulness, meditation, getting out in nature. I can't really teach devotion, but if you're inclined to go to church, that would be part of the spiritual component. And then there's the physical, which is mind-body connection. The foods we eat impact our moods. The exercise release endorphins, also a mood enhancer. The amount of sleep we get. And then there's the I, the intellectual. Intellectual is living, not being afraid to fail, right? Trying something new, reading something and listening to something inspiring every single day. And self-awareness, always being self-aware of what you're thinking and feeling. So now you get to choose what you want to do next. As soon as I become self-aware, I get to choose, is this thought enhancing my experience right now, or is it bringing me down? So now
was it your
choice. Huh?
I'm sorry, Linda. Was it your cumulative experience? You know, I just think it's interesting, and I was telling Jen this, that I think it's really cool that you teach a happiness class. I think every school needs a happiness class, and to teach it.
Yes.
Every soccer club, honestly, any type of educating our kids on any sport, especially the more competitive you get, I think could use something like that. But
Jen, did she know about your mind to define?
No.
Well, I think that's really cool. Jen's really into the mind aspect of the game too.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, what you do when you're not on the pitch, for example. How do you vision yourself? How do you talk to yourself? But my question to you was, do you think that this, you know, your cumulative experience of going through Olympic development, going through, you know, playing for the Shield, which yay, USA, and one of my really good buddies. But do you think that whole experience, and then teaching 30 years of physical education, led you to a place that said, you know what, it's not Olympic development, it's not physical education class. It is this aspect that will bring all those other things together. Is that what happened to you from a cumulative aspect, or?
Absolutely, because looking back, even in the dark times, right? Even in the dark times, and right, even moving through as a child, you know, and developing, what I get to teach now is something that I feel every single human being on earth would benefit from. And now I'm giving it to 11, 12, 13, 14 middle schoolers.
In a great time where their brains
have
are
no idea, right?
Neuroplastic.
If you were to hear, exactly, yes. If you were to hear some of the reflections, because they do a Be Happy action plan at the end of my year, the year that they're in my class. And some of the reflections are something so simple in there says, I didn't know it was okay to be angry. I didn't know it was okay to be sad and depressed. No one ever told me. Why not?
So they're feeling something about their own emotions that have been stifled by society. You know, like my son said that to me. You know, I could see he was on the verge of tears, and he wasn't going to have it. I said, "It's okay to cry, Max." And he goes, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "Why? Why is it not okay?" It's not a demasculinity. You know, it's not something. So I think it's super important what Linda does for a living. And also Jen talked to my son.
Though, Ruth, right? Even to name the emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You were talking so S
recognize it in your body.
Yeah, and you're right. So to be able to know what's happening and it's normal, and we all, by the way, have a right to all of those. Like it doesn't matter your ethnicity or your gender or your religiosity. Like we were all built for that. But I wanted you to finish. So S is for spiritual.
Okay,
P is for physical. I intellectual. R, yes.
The I's, you know, the affirmations and self-awareness. And then the R is relationship with oneself and with others. Are you surrounding yourself with people that enhance your life? Are you being very hard? Are you being really hard on yourself? I was a perfectionist. I was very hard on myself. Yeah, right?
Terrible. Yes.
And then
I was a very bad teammate to myself.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We would never say that to other people the way we talk to ourselves, ever. Right? And then the E is the emotional, is allowing all emotions, right, to be able to lead towards resilience. So that would be journaling. That would be just acknowledging and allowing and breathing through the emotion, right? And then at the same time, using the intellectual is, what thoughts am I thinking that I'm experiencing this feeling? And do I need to change it? How can I change it? It's not about you coming in and fixing me. It's what can I do on a daily basis, looking at the 5 SPIRE principles. Can I prescribe for myself to be happy? Right? For me, what usually goes out as I work is my relational part goes out, because I tend to not do a lot of stuff with my friends during the week, and I'm out of balance. So
you're busy.
let's go play pickleball like every Wednesday now, because I recognize that for me, we play.
JV, there's that pickleball theme with soccer players.
Yeah.
You didn't want to see us play some pickleball.
We're pretty competitive.
We are
shocker.
Oh my God.
Soccer. So anyway, so it's like, it's putting it in play and being the creator of my life and being the creator of a life I will love.
What does the E stand for?
Emotional.
Emotional.
Yeah, but I love that, because I feel like if I just think about who our primary audience is for this, and it's actually more than just soccer, but a lot of parents who are probably in a car right now, driving somewhere, probably a long time for a game. And the number of times I'm just thinking of my daughter's team. She's 16. They went down. They were in Florida. I did not get to go, Linda. I was very, very bitter about that. But they had a game that went to PKs. And I had already done some mindset training with them, and I was very, I guess I was a little sad for them. They lost in PKs, which part doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the number of players that refused to either step up to take it, or had already convinced themselves that they were going to miss. So that heart math, that SPIRE principle, and you can't. Am I correct in saying it's not something you can call on in the moment? You have to practice it, just like you practice your reps in kicking or shooting.
Yes.
Every day.
It's also like visualization, which would fall under the I, the intellectual part, right? Being able to visualize yourself even experiencing that 100 times before, not just when you get up there and kick. You've already experienced it. You've already lived it. You've already experienced the feeling. You've already seen the direction in which you want the ball. You've already seen the ball go in the back of the net, right? Even I think they call it the end result. I'm sure you're aware of that, right? So the end result, I coach volleyball, right, for my boys at middle school. I take them to the end result. The day of games, first we meditate, then I do every skill in their head. We practice the perfect skill, perfect detail, and then to the end result. So when you do get up to be that player that has to serve the winning goal, the winning serve, you've already done it.
Right. And then just to manage yourself in that moment through those techniques you talked about, right?
Yes.
I call that mental gymnastics.
Yes.
I used to do it all the time.
I love this. I could talk about this subject forever, but I also have to ask too, just reading about in your profile, being a White House champion of change, one of the co-founders, I believe, of the Miami Heat. What got you into those kinds of things too? Like, I feel like your experience is so it has a theme, but it's also a bit eclectic, and it's so interesting.
Yeah. So before 2006, I used to complain about the environment, what was happening to all these beautiful animals and everything. And then one day I'm in all these leadership classes, right? And I see the polar bear from The Inconvenient Truth drowned. And I'm saying to myself, I got so upset. I love polar bears. And I saw this bear drown. And I'm like, there's no way on earth that in its own habitat that it cannot survive. Right. So I decided, okay, let's put this leadership stuff to work. So I went back to school, created a green team with 3 students and 3 teachers. And one of our initiatives was the How Low Can We Go challenge. That was energy. That was measuring energy and being able to reduce our energy at school. And our other one was the dumpster diving, which was recycling. Right. So we took that on. 2 years, we reduced 26% of our energy, which was a lot. And I started go full blown. I was going right into the environment piece. And I saw the Miami Heat when the big 3 were together with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Boss. And they were kicking butt in the NBA. I saw that American Airlines arena, the Miami Heat, were extremely environmentally friendly. So I emailed one of their business operators, and I asked if we could have if they had a woman that could be a career day at our school, environmental career day. So Jackie Ventura shows up at Driftwood. I pitched her the How Low Could We Go challenge as a district initiative. They've been sponsoring the initiative now, the How Low Can We Go challenge. They sponsor, now it's all of South Florida. So you've got Palm Beach, which is the 11th largest school district in the country. Broward County, which is the 6th largest, and then you got Dade, which is the 3rd or 4th. And you've got all these schools that get to register for the How Low Can We Go? And they have 3 months to reduce their energy usage. And we compare to the baseline from the previous year. The schools that win, right, will be recognized at halftime during the Miami Heat game. The banners, the plaques, the tickets, the transportation is all, and a Miami Heat pep rally. So that's the recognition that the schools win. But not only that, though, is that we were at Driftwood. We've got an environmental, that's a school I teach at. We've got a butterfly garden, a food forest, vegetable garden, solar station, native trees. On my rope course, we plant trees there to create shade. It's just, yeah. So that's my other world, the environment.
Yeah. And then just recently, of course, got kind of related to that world. I saw on Facebook, I was very jealous and also excited for the post. UN Sustainability Soccer Tournament, Cancun. You and Ruth were there. Awesome pictures. And there was by the way, a secondary post too, that was, thanking the San Diego soccer women for, I don't know if that was the same or different. It looks like the Cancun thing. What was that about? So you're going, Ruth, I know you're working with girls in soccer, maybe boys too. What is that all about? Is that U.S. Women's National Team related? Is it kind of a side project?
It's a side project for sure. Yeah, so Ruth and I'm sure there's several other players on the 85ers that are very into, we got Pam Ballman, she's vegan, and she's all about the vegan world. And then you have Ruth with her packaging and a number of her other sustainability initiatives. And then mine is education. I'm currently this weekend, I have to fill out 2 applications to win awards for my school and the How Low Can We Go challenge.
Wow.
So because they're innovative, they're different. They bring recognition, right? And they bring recognition to what's important in with Brandy, the United Nations sustainability goals, is climate action.
Yeah.
So,
and the other part of that too is not just a sustainability piece. There's also that ball that you're seeing right there.
It's the cool colored ball.
Yeah. And on it has like, let's take care of the creatures under the earth, above the earth. I mean, they're like the water, all sorts of things. But one of the things that was interesting that we found out when we were there, beyond it being, so you can kind of see on that.
Scrolling through all you guys' pictures.
was that that women's necks, I just thought this was interesting. Did Brandy talk to you about this a little? I don't know if you were there, Linda, or if I was in the pool playing with all those people with those free drinks. But but the ball, she has a 4.5 ball there, and that ball has been, so men have stronger necks, and so hitting a 5 ball is easier on their necks. And they've done studies that found that a 4.5 ball is actually the proper size for women, for their
neck muscles,
and maybe even some, some of this brain, these brain issues that are happening.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that ball right there, I'll let you see it. She's going to send us one, but that's a 4.5.
Interesting. And so are you guys there for soccer, for sustainability? Both? Is soccer the tool?
Both.
Okay. So it's also, is it like developing the game as well in Cancun or in and around anybody else who's coming to that?
The BA Cup stands for Buenos Aires. And the woman who does all the BA Cups, and she does them around the world.
I got to get her on here, right?
Yeah, she's cool. I can
got it.
Make that connection. But so what she does is that all these tournaments are for older adults. And the beauty of that is some of these women that we met there hadn't touched us, didn't ever played soccer until they were 45 years old.
Oh my God.
And they're out there, and these are like 7v7, 60 by 60 fields, something like that. I mean, it was pretty small. And I'm like, play line to line. You can be like Lionel Messi and walk there. You don't need to, because they're like this side of the field or this side of the field. But they were beautiful. These people were beautiful, wonderful group of women. Brandy, who connected us into this, is a major advocate for recreational soccer around the world. And so I'll be heading up to a tournament in Michigan with her, Punta Cana next year for this BA Cup. And all Linda and I did was just show up, and you cannot imagine how these people, Linda, tell what was your experience about these people? I mean, it was just beautiful.
They were so excited to meet us. It was just, it felt very humble because it was like, I don't know. I still don't recognize that we played on the first as the 85ers and how unique and special that really is, and then you had women that had been following women's soccer way back then.
Right.
They knew the Michelle Akers and stuff like that. And it was just a real special time, and the hugs and stuff, like the pictures and the signed autographs and things like that. It was just a really special time for them, but also I know I can speak for me, but for Ruth too, it was just a really special moment. The weekend was amazing.
Yeah. Linda, did you when you made the 85 team, did you recognize at that moment that what that did for the world in terms of the DNA of U.S. women's soccer? I don't think any of us did.
I don't think we're really realizing it until it's been in retrospect, honestly. I think when you and I want to call out too that whether it's you guys, the 85ers, even the, you can talk about the 91ers and all the ERs of the games, right? Is how many times, I don't know about you. I'm super excited. I'm a little jealous, but super excited about the growth of the women's game, particularly in soccer, but all the sports, right? All the sports. That's what we want, right? I like that the U.S. has to now earn it and really work hard because teams have figured out a way. You got to figure out a way to put people on top. But I want to just call you guys about that, and along with your colleagues in a good way for giving back to the game and the people of the game, when oftentimes from the beginning the game didn't give back to you. You know what I mean? When it came to either recognition or definitely not pay. But when the game didn't give anything, you guys felt, along with many of your counterparts, just this interesting drive to give back more. And
I think, and Linda's doing that. I mean, every day she does it in a way that I wish was shared with us as we were kind of going through our journey of this. I never knew, I mean, of course it's special to be the first to do anything if you're the first one to do it. But it
can be lonely though too.
But while we were doing it, right? Yeah, when you're in the back of the bus and you're by yourself, it is lonely. But what I was going to say about
she
that,
did it again, Linda.
I know, she did it again.
But we were just like, yay, we get to extend our season. We get Cheez-Its. We get that $10 a day, and I'm going to eat some more Cheez-Its. We didn't have any idea about that. And I think that's what makes this team, and I'm not speaking for our team, but I know Linda because I travel with her a lot. She's very humble, very generous, very kind to other people, and many times walks me off the cliff when I'm not. If I'm feeling some way.
I'm getting the wrap-up sign from JB, so I got just a couple quick hits, and then we'll close it out. And Linda, let you get back because you got apparently some paperwork to do. And Ruth, I know you have a job.
Got another Zoom call at 3:30.
Okay, so really fast, Ruth, what made Linda ferocious as a defender in front of you? What was it?
Well, here you got a 5'2". And she is a muscular, you could just tell she's
gonna kick your ass,
badass, right? And I'm like, holy cannoli, and I watched her. I think you did break Debbie Lewis's leg. I'm almost for sure you did it. But
Linda's accident.
But
I don't remember.
You can look in someone's eyes and you can see that, or you can look at their body posture. You can look. I always felt like when Linda was in front of me that I directed her, but I didn't have to as much as I had to do what she freaking wasn't doing, was directing the other player. No, I'm kidding, Lynn. She was no, but you could just look at her and tell that she was just
she had you.
Yeah, and she had my back always.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. So last two for you, Linda. First of all, real quick, when you're a PE teacher, was your soccer unit harder than the average PE teachers?
It was more organized.
Appreciate that.
You know,
Oh, that was
and
diplomatic.
the expectations are always going to be higher to detail.
Okay,
That's the difference.
love
It's the
that.
discipline.
Love that. And last but not least, just your general thoughts. I'll tell you personally, I have a 9-year-old girl. I have two boys. I have a 9-year-old girl and a 16-year-old girl who get to watch the game in a different way that I'd ever had. With your perspective, and there's certainly everything's not perfect, but thoughts for the journey on somebody, kids that are young listening to this, thinking about that could be a path for them with the growth of the game.
So what was the question?
Just your thoughts on overall, like what your thoughts on maybe a young person. I've got a 16-year-old daughter who, doesn't know what she wants to do yet, but looks and is considering options that weren't necessarily there for us so much. What is that advice to is it being grounded, being in touch with your heart math, practicing those soft skills? What is it for to stay have longevity in a game with so much pressure now because it's grown so much so fast?
The first thing, two things. The first thing that comes to mind is be present, to appreciate the moment, to appreciate what's going on right here, right now. Right? Because the next moment will take care of itself as long as you're in the present moment. And it's the journey, not the destination. It was all the stuff that led up to the 85, to the national team. It was every game, every practice, every time you laced up your shoes, every single time you did a wind sprint, every single time that you stayed after practice, every single time that you bonded with friends, your teammates. It's the journey. Right. And we can do a whole lot more than what this thinks we can.
And gratitude. I think, I didn't mean to butt in on Linda's third answer, which I knew she was coming to. I think having gratitude and then understanding that it's super, super important to reach back and grab someone and carry them with you.
That's a good one.
And Ruth is filled with gratitude, and she has an opportunity. She does it all the time where she makes dreams come true for little kids all the time.
Well, ladies, I am thoroughly just tickled by this episode. So glad that Linda, I got you on here, and how great that I convinced Ruth. It wasn't hard to be able to come along and do a co-hosting just to get not only, Linda, your personal story, but also it's always fun because soccer's a team sport. So it's fun to have a team interview. Thank you for everything you did when people like me really needed people to look up to, but we didn't quite have that line of sight, and for macheteing that path so that my girls can easily now, my boys too, frankly, look to the possibilities that are there because somebody blazed the trail. Thank you guys for being on.
Thank you for bringing this and making this available to everybody, because you're bringing it out to everybody too. You're sharing it with the world too. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. And by the way, I probably could have started this way, JB, but do I have it right? We're at the 40th anniversary. Is it 40 years? It's 40 years.
40 years.
Holy crap.
Woo!
40 years of U.S. Women's National Team Soccer, and it just keeps getting better. Where JB does, I get in trouble, please remember to, listeners, like, review, follow, share. Only send the good reviews to me. You can send all the bad ones to JB. It's fine. He'll respond. Linda Gancitano, Ruth Harker, OG's in the game. So excited. Thank you guys for being on.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Linda.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great day.
Bye.